Hello, class. How's it going? It is Wednesday morning. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the 5-1 assignment this week. It is the second milestone assignment in your final project. The goal of this assignment is for you to present a hypothetical research study. Your answer here, your entry here, your submission here, I guess is the right word, should build on some of the things we've been doing in the course so far. It's going to integrate some things you know about research design from chapter 2. It's also going to integrate some of the things you're learning about personality and how we assess personality that you've gotten from other parts of the course, including the research articles that you've read. Because this is about research methods, it's important that you will have read chapter 2 in the textbook. If you need to go back and look at that, that's fine. All I do as a doctor of psychology is reread stuff. So it's part of the course, it's part of the game. But it's important that you have that foundation and that you know some of the basic research methods we talked about, because you're going to need to pick one here and then design a hypothetical study around it. So if you got to go back to basics, spend the time and go back to basics and make sure you have some of that knowledge going into this. So this assignment is located in Module 5. It appears as a discussion board, so it's a little bit different of a milestone. All our other milestones for this final project are going to be Word documents that you submit. In this case, it's a discussion board, so it's a little bit of a different format, but luckily you've done quite a few discussion boards and you know how these go. So even though this is a discussion board, and you'll put this assignment in just like you do the other ones, you start a new thread and go from there. Even though this is a discussion board, I want you to think of this one as a discussion board on steroids. You're going to want to do more than you typically do in a discussion board. I know that some of you on discussion board assignments, you sort of come up to a deadline, you fire off some quick answers that maybe aren't your best work, but you know you're going to get some points for it, and maybe you're not shooting for an A that week, and you know we all move on. In this case, you're going to want to really spend some time doing a quality initial post and 2 quality peer responses. This is a 115-point assignment, so you're going to need to do a little bit more than you typically do on a discussion board. Just keep that in mind. If you're finding that you're not getting an initial discussion board done by Thursday night, I'd rather have you do a quality one on Friday or Saturday than a not quality one on Thursday night. So the point I'm trying to make here is do a quality assignment this week. It's going to save you a lot of time and trouble down the line. So put in the time here. Let's look at the specific instructions for this assignment. What we're going to be writing on this discussion board is a hypothetical study. This should be clear in the course now, but we're not actually going to do this study. We're just going to talk about a hypothetical one that we're thinking of doing. The nice thing about that is, you know, we can kind of be a little unrealistic in some ways. You know, if you want to hypothetically have 10,000 subjects for your study, that's okay. I'm not going to grade on that kind of thing. I'm not going to grade necessarily on how feasible it is in the real world. What I am going to grade on, though, is that you know some things about the research methods in the course, and that you can integrate some things about personality assessment and personality theory that we talked about in the course, so that you're kind of putting some of the threads together. That's what I'm looking for. As we go down this document here, we're seeing that these are the questions we need to answer on this 5-1 assignment. If you would like, feel free to copy and paste these into the discussion board and use this as a template to answer. That's a good way to stay organized in making sure that you're answering all of the elements here, all of the little parts of the questions. So let's review them real quick. The first bullet point here, what research design have you chosen to address in your question? So we've talked about case studies, we've talked about clinical research, we've talked about correlations. If you're going to do one of those three, tell me why. Give me a few sentences about what makes that design appropriate for your research question. Again, you can sort of move beyond those. You could do a survey and get a bunch of data, even if you're not doing a correlation. You could just do a survey and survey a bunch of people and use descriptive statistics instead of running a correlational procedure. That's fine too. Some people might be using a true experimental design where they're trying to control variables. Those are all things that we brought up in Chapter 2, but now's your opportunity to clarify what method you're going to use, what research design you're going to use, and tell me why a little bit. The second bullet point and the third bullet point are a little bit redundant. So let's talk about those real quick. The second bullet point is asking you, how have you built upon that initial formative research design you did in the Module 2 discussion? So tell me what things you're adding from Module 2. The third bullet point is talking about what things you're adding now that you have a more clear research question from your Module 4 assignment. So both of these are asking really what's new. And if you give two answers that are kind of similar, that's fine. I'd rather have two redundant answers than you not address these enough. So just tell me basically what these questions are looking for is, now that you've clarified your research question a little bit, what are some of the things that you're realizing you need to build into this study? What has changed since week 2 in the course for you? You can even answer these by saying, since week 2, here are some things that I've decided to do or that are different. The next bullet point here is asking, how will your research design be implemented? This is a bit of a vague question, and I'm going to give you some specific ways to answer this. But really what it's asking for is, what's the methodology going to be? How are you going to recruit participants? How are you going to measure the variables that you want to measure? When are you going to get those measurements? At what ages of participants do those measurements make sense? So it's going to ask, what this is really pulling for is some methodology from you. I'm having trouble talking today. Had a little too much coffee this morning. Last bullet point here is asking about ethics. So, again, don't give me just like the bullet point or boilerplate, I'm going to get informed consent. Go a little bit further here. I'd like to see you come up with some specific ethical statutes that apply to your study. Write me a short paragraph. So get to the next level, if you can in this case. I came up with a little document that you're going to see attached to the announcement here. I'm going to call these like some more starter questions. You don't have to answer all of these, but these are just some things that you can think about as you kind of go through the bullet points for this assignment. So I've got these bullet points that we just talked about above. But to get into the weeds a little bit, to get into the fine print here, you can talk about recruiting participants. Where are you going to recruit them? Does it make sense to have a clinical sample or a non-clinical sample? If you're looking at people that have a mental health concern or a personality disorder, or who might be in treatment for something, you're going to want to recruit from some type of clinical environment. If you're looking for people that maybe don't have a mental health concern or a mental health diagnosis, you're recruiting from a non-clinical environment. So you can specify what fits your study here. What's a good number for you? If you're doing a case study or you're doing clinical research, you're probably going to have less participants in your study because you're looking for more in-depth detail about those participants. If you're using a survey to collect data, or you're using measures to collect numerical data for a correlation, you're going to need more participants. So you can think about what's a good number for you. Is it 30? Is it 50? Is it 100? Whatever you decide, let me know. That's a nice detail to add. Some of you have mentioned wanting to do a correlational method. If you're going to do a correlational method, you have to think about how you're going to get two numeric variables. Things like age, height, weight, number of siblings, birth order was one they talked about in one of the articles that were provided in the course. Those are types of numeric variables. Alternatively, a lot of psychologists generate numeric variables by using scale scores on assessments. So if you think about those assessments we did, like the 16PF or the Big Five or the Myers-Briggs, those all gave you numeric scores. You can also just think about, like, if you want to get a numeric scale on something, you can just sort of invent a measure here. Say, I'm going to do a scale on perfectionism, or I'm going to do a scale on, nervousness, or I'm going to do a scale on, the number of times someone's experienced traumas. So you can, have some latitude to be creative. But what I'm really trying to say here is that if you're going to do a correlation, show me that you've come up with a way to get some numeric data for both of the variables in the correlation. Some students have talked about designing a survey. If you do that, that's great. Tell me some of the main questions of the survey. That's going to demonstrate to me that you understand important questions to ask about personality. So give me a little sample of some of the questions in your survey. Tell me about when you're going to collect data in your study. Tell me about what you think the general sort of order of events, the timeline of events in your study. What that looks like. At what ages are you going to collect participant data? If it's a longitudinal study, what 2 points are you going to collect data? Lastly, tell me what statutes from Section 8 of the AP Ethics Code apply. Again, try to figure out if you're going to do some debriefing after the study. Are there going to be incentives for participation? Are there risks to participants that they need to be aware of? A great way to address this, as always, is to actually go to the AP Ethics Code. You can go to this website, you can scroll right down to Section 8, and you're just going to have a number of statutes that might apply here. Think about which ones are important for your hypothetical study. So that is how you can get some detail in this bottom part. And I'm just going to wrap up today's video by talking a little bit about the response posts. Again, take some time here and give me some substantive responses. This is definitely a week where you want to try to do a little bit more. And really, if you've done a good job on your initial post, if you've looked at Chapter 2, if you've looked at some of these ethical statutes, if you've thought hard about issues in your own hypothetical study, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to give some good substantive responses, offer some suggestions, offer some statutes from the ethics code that might apply to their study. So, try to go a little harder on this assignment, because I think, the better you do here in this milestone, the less you're going to have to do on the back end when you make some edits and you submit your final project. So save yourself the time in the long run by doing a quality submission this week. You'll see on the document there's some of the scoring rubric that we'll be looking for is generating the actual grade. As I often suggest, though, focus on just doing really quality answers to all of these questions, and that'll take care of the rubric. So have fun with it. I look forward to seeing your responses. And again, if there's any questions along the way, feel free to email me and let me know what you're thinking. Take care.